Good evening. My name is Erin Becker, and I'm the director of the Cambridge Art Association, and you're watching Creative Process. This month, my guest is local photographer Zoe Perry-Wood. Welcome, Zoe.
Thank you.
So to kick things off tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about your background and when you first got into photography. So when did you first pick up a camera?
Well, that's an interesting question. I picked up my father's camera when I was about 12 years old.
Oh.
He photographed our family vacations,
Mm-hmm.
and my fondest memories in my childhood was when the vacation photographs came back, and my father would unwrap them and set up the slide projector and close the curtains, and we'd all sit down and look at the slides.
Oh, that's so much fun.
It was so much fun. And if we really bugged him in the middle of the winter, he might pull them out again.
Mm-hmm.
And if we really bugged him, he would even pull out the pictures of before he and my mother were married and their honeymoon.
Oh,
and
wow.
I think I really learned from that the power of photography and the power of visual media.
Wow, so you grew up with photographs all around
Yes,
you. It was definitely
yes.
part of your family.
Absolutely.
Do you remember when you first started taking pictures, what kind of camera you were using?
It was a Minolta. It was my father's
Yeah.
Minolta, yeah.
Cool. And then when did you start taking pictures sort of more seriously? When did you start taking your photography to be sort of a second career?
Well, I kind of took my father's camera and brought it with me to high school and used it as the editor of the yearbook, and then went straight to art school.
Yeah.
Went to Mass Art where I studied photography,
Yeah.
and then from there on have done photography pretty much nonstop.
Cool. And did you ever dabble in any other media, or was it always photography was your first love?
I always,
Never strayed.
No, I always stray. I stray all the time. I'm always straying. I strayed as a child. So you had mentioned early memories, early artistic memories. I remember winning the Flag Day contest with a drawing that I did.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was, and it really supported my identity as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course in art school I did. You did foundations and then other things. I did ceramics. I did a lot of drawing and some painting. And now I'm really interested in working with found objects and ensemblage. And I've done painting, I've done drawing still through my adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always dabbling in different things and always looking. And that's the other thing that I do a lot is looking at different kinds of art. I don't just look at photography, I look at all kinds of art. And I get a lot of inspiration from different kinds of art.
Cool. Do you want to take a look at some of your early work and talk about
Sure,
it?
sure.
All right, so we're just going to switch over here. So what are we looking at here?
Well, this is an image that I took in New Orleans, actually, in a cafe. And in art school, I went to Mass Art where I learned about the history of photography. I learned about street photography and documentary photography, and I began to go out and do that kind of photography. Of course, emulating, famous photographers such as Helen Levitt or Robert Frank, Henri Cartier-Bresson, Gary Winogrand, Lee Friedlander, Walker Evans, Diane Arbus. I mean, all of these street photographers, and that's what I started to do. And this is Boston, this is Jamaica Plain. I lived in Jamaica Plain when I went to Mass Art and photographed around there quite a lot. And so one of the things I did was cafes.
Yeah.
Just going into cafes and just sitting and just seeing what was happening around me and seeing what I could photograph, either sort of like Gary Winogrand or Lee Friedlander, not being seen myself and just photographing, and sometimes actually interacting with people and engaging with them and talking with them. And but a lot of times it was sort of like this, where I was just capturing what was around me.
And this is on film.
This is all on film. There was no digital back then.
I know. Just for our viewers to be able to see. Now, was this a family that you knew, or were they people that you encountered?
I was walking in a park in Cambridge by the river, and I saw this family and just fell in love with them and talked with the father and asked if I could take their portrait. And this was actually in large format. I was shooting with a 4x5 camera over my shoulder. I was carrying this around, and so it was very, imposing. Like, I want to take your picture, and I'm going to set up this big tripod, and and so they posed for me, and it was wonderful.
I love it. I love that the little girls look sort of annoyed. It's like a very, it's like how little kids are. They're like, nah.
Yeah. And now we're on to where I was photographing in subways. So I would get on the subway and ride them practically all day, and often to the very last stop, and take pictures while I was on the subway. And then I would get off the subway and I would wander through the neighborhoods and get a feel for the neighborhoods and the people, and I would photograph in the cafes in the neighborhoods. Now this image I took, I shot an entire roll of film. I spoke to these girls and hung out with them through the whole subway ride. It was above ground. The green line was above ground in the Jamaica Plain area. Oh. And so I shot an entire roll of film, and this was the very last image.
I love that. There's so much attitude in her face.
Typical teenager,
yeah.
smoking a cigarette.
She's smoking on the tea?
Yes, she's smoking.
Were you allowed to do that back then?
Oh, no, of course not. But, you know, they were teenagers. No one was paying attention.
Oh, wow. So these are old Green Line trains?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
They no longer exist, or if they do, they're in some graveyard.
Or in a train museum.
Right. The Orange Line. This is the Orange Line.
These are fantastic.
Roxbury.
And so when you originally printed these, they were large format photos? Or were they, or like how big were they?
These on the subway and cafes were all, I was shooting 35mm film. This is 35mm. And then I was printing, at that time, I was really only printing 11x14, and then later on when I was working for another photographer and I had the facilities, I then printed 16x20.
Cool.
This is the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Someone is not a happy camper. Oh, so cute. I'm just kind of flashing through these so that
that's fine. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Sort of compare and contrast the early work to more of what you're doing.
And they're a little mixed up. So again, this is the 4x5, the large format that I was carrying around the neighborhood in Jamaica Plain.
Is that kid wearing just like sleeves? Is that like not a t-shirt?
It's like it's a see-through shirt.
Oh, okay.
In the print, you can actually see.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. All right, so that's the end of that round. So I think it's interesting to discuss. You know, you've been working in film for a long time. You worked in film. What was the transition to digital like for you? And was there a period where you were kind of doing some of both and then you went fully digital? What was that like?
It was arduous. It was difficult to let go of film. I love film. I still, you know, have a love for it and still want to work with it. But I felt as if I really needed to keep up with the times. And I had to be able to afford to do it as well. I had to be able to buy the cameras. I had to have the computers that were up to date. I had to, and all the other parts that you need. So it was a slow process, and I also needed to learn. I took some courses. I learned all about digital, and you know, there was a learning curve. Once I got there, I was going, because all of a sudden, rather than shooting rolls of film and sort of putting them away until I had time to process them and then make proof sheets and then look at them, I was able to actually go home and look at what I had shot that day, and then sort of learn from that and grow from that, and move on. So that's a very different process.
Yeah, I think the whole approach to photography is different. And you were talking about being a kid and waiting for the slides to come back, and I remember when I was a kid, it was the same thing. You know, you like mailed everything away and you waited for the envelope to come back, and now we just have instant gratification.
It's right there. You snap it and you look at it.
Yeah, it's like, is that bad? Okay, we're going to do that again. But it's sort of like you lose some of the weird outtakes, I feel like.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
It's true. You do.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about Elsa next or about Bagley?
Oh, well, let's talk about Bagley, and then hopefully we'll move into Elsa, because Bagley came first.
And I think these are, I mean, this is a very exciting photo series in general, but for me, it's really great to see some of your older work and how that relates to what you've been doing more recently.
Absolutely. Because there was a progression, absolutely a progression from one to another.
So, switching over. So, if you want to talk a little bit about what Bagley is before we start talking about the photos. And actually, we're just going to switch back for a second.
So Bagley is the Boston Alliance of GLBT Youth, and there's a lot more to that name, but they didn't change it. So GLBT and on, to be inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And that organization has been in existence for, I think it's about 35 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, and they provide a lot of services for GLBT and other youth currently. They just a little over a year ago, they actually opened a community center. So now they have a place that's theirs that youth can actually go to.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, it's really wonderful. And they have, I think they're doing high school degrees there for them, GEDs. They have a health center where they do testing, health support. I'm not a good representative of everything. I know they do so much. It's amazing.
But they serve a very important community.
Yes, they do serve a very important at-risk community. And one of the things they do is they have events, and one of their events is the Bagley Prom. And so the prom happens in prom season, and it has been happening now for 33 years. It was in a church basement, I think, when it first began.
Okay.
Now it's in Boston City Hall, take over the whole building for the evening. And
the whole City Hall?
Pretty much.
Or the big, oh wow.
Yeah, they have like that dance floor, they come in upstairs, downstairs, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And so that prom, I have been photographing it now for 8 years. And at first I went into the prom and I shot it more like the street work I'd done, candid, and I didn't actually bring any of those, but you can see them on my website. And I really enjoyed that, and I got some very interesting work that way. But one thing that I found was that I wasn't getting enough interaction with the youth and getting to know them enough by shooting that way. And in addition, I thought I wanted to give them prom portraits the way that other youth get prom portraits when they go to a prom. And because many of these youth were not going to their own proms because they weren't comfortable. So they deserve to have that kind of portrait. And so I actually learned portrait photography for this event, and took a couple of courses to learn lighting, and bought the equipment, and I went in there with setups and started taking portraits.
Excellent. So you set up like your endless, and they
the
sign
seamless,
up? Or seamless
and lights.
Oh, cool. And do you just kind of capture people as they walk in, or do they sign up to be photographed, or how does that work?
Well, I'm set up.
Because I don't remember prom.
I barely remember standing there and having my picture taken. I do, yeah. But so I'm off in one corner. Yeah. And most of them will know I'm there, or an announcement will be made. Some of them might not even know I'm there because I'm a little bit in the back there. But they'll come by and they'll just get in line and want to be photographed. I have rarely had to go find subjects.
Yeah, well, I've seen a lot of the series, so let's take a look, and you can kind of talk about some of the different subjects that you've encountered. So this is the first one. Is this the first one that we're looking at?
This is one from the first year that I began portraits.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the early striking ones. That's Johnny, and yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what this one has actually gotten some into several shows, and it's definitely quite a striking image. It was one of the first ones where I really felt like, yes, this image is, this series is going to be something good and important. This is a little more recent.
Okay.
This was 2014. These two guys, I forget their names, but they were wonderful. They had jackets to match, and I just thought, I really want to see more, so I had them take their jackets off, and I worked with them a little bit to pose them.
Cool.
And again, that was 2014.
Oh, she's got a Little Mermaid tattoo. She looks like the Little Mermaid.
That's Lucia. That was from the first year, probably 2011.
Okay.
Yes, and these two are quite wonderful. Jasmine and I forgot the other one's name.
Nice. Oh, that's so cute.
That's Paul.
I haven't actually seen a lot of these. This is exciting for me to see more of them. And
There is.
now, the last couple of years, the prom has been held after the Pride Parade, correct? Or I think you've told me that, or at least 1 year maybe.
It's after Youth Pride.
Oh, okay.
Youth Pride is in May.
Okay.
And they have that happens during the day, and they have a parade that marches through Boston, and then they have an event with music outside of Boston City Hall, and then after that in the evening they have the prom.
Awesome. And now I think we should spend a little bit more time with this photograph because it has literally traveled around the world.
It has traveled some, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, this is Caitlin, and Caitlin, first one of the big debuts was in the Cambridge Art Association's National Prize Show, and it won Best in Show. I was very pleased and just excited to have that happen. It has also been in the National Portrait Gallery in London for the Taylor Wesson Portrait Prize. It has also been at the Danforth Museum for the New England Photo Biennial. It was recently at the Center for Photography at Woodstock in New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think it's been a couple of other places that I can't remember right now.
I know they're all on your website.
They're on my website. It's on my resume. It's been many places, and it is a very striking. When people have said about it that she's just in this place where you can really see that she sort of struggles with her identity of being a young woman, a very she's putting herself out there as female, as a young woman, and yet she's sort of struggling with who am I and who are you and where do I fit.
But I think what's so compelling about it is that she does seem very strong, but she's also looking right at you as a viewer and as the photographer, and it's just kind of, and the red color doesn't hurt the situation, but it's a very bold statement. She appears to be a very bold young woman. It's printed pretty large too, so you really kind of fills up the room and captures you. I think we have a few more.
This one is from this year, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I started experimenting with working with people in some different ways when I was photographing them. And also, one of the things I noticed this year, and you may see a few more here, is that I noticed that we're more and more youth who, at a younger age, were feeling more comfortable with their identity, with a trans identity. Just more than ever before, there were youth who identified as trans who were fairly young, and that's changing. It wasn't like that 5 or 6 or 8 years ago, and it's good. It's such a wonderful service that Bagley is providing for these youth to be able to have this place.
That's so fantastic. Do you think that their comfort with expressing that identity at a younger age has anything to do with like things that are happening in pop culture and in the media and Caitlyn Jenner?
Well, it can't not. It absolutely. This is one of my favorite images that I shot in 2015.
Oh, and it's such that's like more of a traditional prom pose. I feel like
in a way
of all of your photos, it's the more traditional prom pose, but then looking out, much more real.
And they're not. Their garb is not traditional prom. They may be positioned as traditional prom, but they are not at all in that tradition.
Yeah.
But back to what you were asking, of course, I mean, pop culture, current culture, the current laws that have changed. I mean, obviously Massachusetts has been a mecca, a safe place for it's been more than 10 years now, but it's just changed now for the whole country, and that just makes an enormous difference to youth. They can feel that change. They can feel the safety. They can feel more safe to be themselves.
Doesn't it make you feel so excited to live in this moment where
it does? Yes.
It's all happening finally.
Finally, yes.
So your last series that we're going to look at, because we've less than 10 minutes, but one of these images was in our Members Prize show, and actually part of the series will be featured in an exhibit this October at the Cambridge Art Association. So you want to talk a little bit about Elsa while I pull up the pictures?
Sure. So I met Elsa in my church. I saw her from behind, actually, the first time I noticed her. I said, whoa, look at that woman. She was dressed elegantly. She had a pin about that big that said, "Go Pats," on the back of her hair, in the bun.
Oh, pinned into her hair, not like on her blazer or something.
Pinned into her bun during the entire football season.
Oh, wow.
And that was my first introduction to her. And as I took notice, I noticed that she was very much respected by so many members of the church. And then I learned more about her role, the roles she played in Lexington with the Historical Society, with the Lexington Symphony, with the Garden Club, with the St. Anthony Exchange with France, Sister City. It's countless, the number of organizations that she was involved with. The Monroe Center for the Arts. I mean, there wasn't some cultural or art organization that she did not touch in Lexington. And after she died just recently, I found out that she had been supporting arts organizations in neighborhood towns, in Waltham, for example, the symphony there. And people knew her and respected her, and she played just such a wonderful role to so many people. And I said, as I sort of got to know her through the church, I said, I think this is someone that I want to photograph. She's visually interesting. She's meaningful to a lot of people. She's elderly, and she's not going to be here forever. She's just not going to be here forever, and I want to capture that before she disappears.
So how did you approach her? What was your, you got to know her at church, but did you sort of just kind of straight out ask her, can I take your picture, or was it a little more subtle than that?
I pretty much straight out asked her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But what I did was I said, I'm interested in working on a project with you. I'm interested in photographing you, but probably not just once, maybe a few times. And can I show you my work? And she said, sure. So then we made a date, and I brought her a box of my photographs so that she could see that I was serious and what kind of work I did. And I showed her the Bagley work.
Yeah.
And she loved it. I mean, a woman of her age and of her generation, I think one of the things about Elsa is that she was always involved with the arts. And so she was around gay people all the time, and had friends who were gay, and supported gay people and gay culture. And so it was wonderful for her. She was like, oh, she looked through my photographs, and she said, oh, you like to photograph interesting people. Yeah. That's why you want to photograph me.
That's so cool. All right, so let's look at this first one, because I love this cane with the rabbit handle. So cool.
That's Willie. She named the cane after her brother.
Now, so when you started this portrait series, did she just kind of show up in what she was wearing that day? Did you give her any guidance, or was it just her own style kind of shining through?
No, Elsa, you cannot tell Elsa what to do.
Okay. I'm getting that impression, but I just wanted to make sure.
Elsa had her own style. That was what attracted me to her. It's possible that over time she may have begun to dress more, knowing that we were doing a portrait. Because at first, I would just approach her during church, and I would say, oh, after church, at the end of the service, I would go up to her and I'd say, are you free after church? She would say yes or no, and if she said yes, I would say, great, I'm going to run downstairs, I'm going to set up my equipment. You take your time, go to coffee hour, and make your way downstairs, and then we would have a shoot. And then I would be responsible for getting her home, but she would not let me take her home without taking me out to lunch. So we would then go out to lunch. She would then order Prosecco, maybe go through a whole bottle, and maybe not. It depended. And then I would bring her home. And this became our ritual. And sometimes we would include other people as well.
Sounds like a fun way to spend a Sunday.
It was.
Oh, so the first one I looked at, was that one of the earlier photos? What sort of time period did this series take place?
The first one you looked at was a little bit later, because that I was getting a little more brave in terms of doing profiles and getting closer up. And I can see, you might not be, but I can see that it was a few years later, and she was definitely aging more. This one here, yeah. Now this one in the pink, that was a little bit earlier, and that was an outfit that she put together. I had no influence whatsoever. You know, this was one of those days where I said, "Are you available?" And because I was like, I have to photograph this outfit.
And the white gloves.
Yes.
And this one has been on display in a couple of places. I love this.
Yes, this is the one that was chosen by Al Miner for the Cambridge Art Association's
Members Prize Show.
Yes.
Yes, I love that she's sort of looking away and she's very proper. The hands are crossed.
Yes.
But I remember you mentioning at the opening that her gloves often didn't match.
Yes.
And sometimes they were dirty, and it was sort of that, like, you know, part of the eccentricity of the woman.
Absolutely.
Part of getting.
Yes, these gloves do not match, and one of them is a garden glove. But it didn't matter.
And this is clearly a different season.
Yes, she totally dressed by the season, of course. This was a winter photograph.
Wow. I think we have one more, and then we actually have less than a minute left, and I want to get a chance for you to pitch your current show.
Oh, okay.
All right. So that's the last image we have of Elsa.
I'll just say that if you notice in every picture, she has a Eiffel Tower of one kind or another, and she spent a lot of time in Paris.
That's so fantastic. Well, before we get cut off at 5:57, your work is currently on view at the Photographic Resource Center. So if you want to tell our guests about that, and also how they can access your website.
Yes, so Exposure 2015 is up at the PRC right now. It's there are 13 artists who are in this show. It's an excellent show. It was curated by Kirsten Grish, who